Hollywood's biggest lie: how silencers actually work. In countless action films, a hero screws a small metal cylinder onto the end of a pistol, takes aim, and fires with little more than a soft, almost gentle puff, leaving guards in the next room completely unaware that anyone has just been shot. It is one of the most persistent myths in cinema, repeated in everything from James Bond to John Wick, and it has convinced generations of moviegoers that a silencer can turn a gunshot into something you could sleep through in the next room. The reality is very different and far noisier than Hollywood would have audiences believe. This is the story of how suppressors actually work and why they were invented in the first place. The man who invented the silencer. The device audiences call a silencer was invented not for the purposes of stealthy assassination, but for a far more mundane and practical reason. In 1902, an American engineer named Hiram Percy Maxim, son of the famous inventor of the Maxim machine gun, began experimenting with ways to reduce the noise produced by firearms. Maxim had also been developing mufflers for automobile engines around the same time, and he recognized that the fundamental physics involved in quieting an explosive combustion engine were remarkably similar to those involved in quieting the explosive discharge of a firearm. In 1909, Maxim patented his device, which he marketed simply as the Maxim silencer, and it quickly became available for civilian purchase through mail-order catalogs, requiring no special license or government paperwork of any kind at the time. Maxim's own stated motivation for the invention had nothing to do with covert warfare or criminal activity. He was concerned primarily with hearing protection for shooters and hunters, as well as reducing noise pollution for people living near shooting ranges and hunting grounds. In his own writings, Maxim expressed frustration that recreational shooting was becoming increasingly difficult in populated areas because of complaints about noise, and he saw his invention as a way to make the sport more socially acceptable. It was not until firearms regulation tightened considerably in the 1930s, largely in response to organized crime during the Prohibition era, that silencers became tightly restricted in the United States under the National Firearms Act of 1934. A piece of legislation that lumped suppressors into the same restrictive category as machine guns and sawed-off shotguns. The actual physics of suppression. To understand why a silencer cannot make a gunshot silent, it helps to understand exactly what produces the noise of a gunshot in the first place. When a firearm is discharged, a tremendous volume of hot, high-pressure gas is released behind the bullet as the propellant burns, and this gas, along with the bullet itself, exits the muzzle at velocities that in many cases exceed the speed of sound. The resulting noise actually comes from several distinct sources, happening almost simultaneously. The rapid expansion of that high-pressure gas as it meets the open air, which creates a violent pressure wave similar to a small explosion. And if the bullet itself is traveling faster than the speed of sound, a distinct sonic crack produced by the bullet as it breaks the sound barrier, entirely separate from the muzzle blast itself. A suppressor works by addressing only the first of these two noise sources. The device attaches to the muzzle of the firearm and contains a series of internal chambers, often called baffles, which are designed to capture and slow the rapidly expanding propellant gas before it reaches open air. As the gas passes through this maze of internal chambers, it is forced to expand more gradually and cool down considerably, which reduces the violence of the pressure wave that reaches the outside air and therefore reduces the overall loudness of the blast. A standard unsuppressed gunshot from a firearm like a 9mm pistol typically registers somewhere between 150 and 165 decibels, a sound intensity comparable to a jet engine at takeoff, and loud enough to cause immediate and permanent hearing damage with even brief exposure. A quality suppressor can reduce that noise by roughly 20 to 35 decibels, depending on the specific firearm and ammunition being used, bringing the noise down to somewhere in the range of 120 to 140 decibels. This is where the Hollywood myth completely falls apart. Even with this significant reduction, a suppressed gunshot is still as loud as, or often considerably louder than, a jackhammer breaking up concrete or a chainsaw cutting through wood, both of which typically register around 100 to 120 decibels. It is loud enough to be clearly heard through walls, loud enough to draw immediate attention in a quiet room, and loud enough to cause hearing damage with repeated exposure even while wearing the suppressor. The soft, almost silent pfft sound audiences hear in films is achieved entirely in post-production, using Foley artists and sound designers who deliberately create an unrealistic effect because the actual sound of a suppressed firearm does not fit the tone filmmakers are trying to achieve in a scene meant to convey stealth. The sound barrier problem. Suppressors face an additional physics problem that has nothing to do with the muzzle blast itself. Even a perfectly suppressed firearm cannot eliminate the sonic crack produced by a bullet traveling faster than the speed of sound, which is roughly 343 meters per second or 1,125 feet per second at sea level under normal atmospheric conditions. Most standard rifle and pistol cartridges fire projectiles well in excess of this speed, meaning the bullet itself continues to produce a sharp, audible crack as it travels through the air, entirely independent of anything happening at the muzzle. This is why truly effective sound reduction requires using specially loaded subsonic ammunition, cartridges deliberately loaded with less propellant so that the bullet never exceeds the speed of sound in the first place. Even then, the combination of a suppressor and subsonic ammunition together typically produces a sound closer to a loud hand clap or a starter pistol, still very much audible, particularly in a quiet indoor environment, and nothing close to the near silence portrayed on screen. Why suppressors were actually used in warfare? If suppressors were never capable of making a gunshot truly silent, why did military forces bother developing them for combat use at all? The answer lies not in achieving stealth in the cinematic sense, but in several more practical tactical advantages. One of the primary military applications historically involved special operations units conducting sabotage or reconnaissance missions, where the goal was not to fire completely undetected, but rather to reduce the ability of an enemy to immediately determine the direction a shot had come from. The sharp, distinct crack of an unsuppressed rifle allows trained soldiers to quickly triangulate a shooter's position, while a suppressed shot, particularly when combined with subsonic ammunition, produces a duller, less directional sound that can buy a shooter critical extra seconds before their position is identified and return fire begins. A second and often underappreciated advantage was the suppression of visible muzzle flash, particularly valuable during nighttime operations. The same internal baffle system that captured and slowed expanding propellant gas also had the effect of cooling that gas before it left the device, which significantly reduced the bright flash of burning propellant that would otherwise be clearly visible in darkness and could immediately reveal a shooter's exact position to enemy forces equipped with night vision or simply watching for muzzle flashes in the dark. British and American special ops units made particular use of suppressed weapons, like the Delisle Commando carbine during the Second World War, for exactly this purpose, valuing the reduced flash and altered sound signature far more than any expectation of true silence. A third, and arguably the most significant modern use, involves simple hearing protection for the shooter and nearby personnel. Repeated exposure to unsuppressed gunfire, even with standard hearing protection like earplugs or earmuffs, causes cumulative and often permanent hearing damage over a career of military or law enforcement service. A suppressor reduces this exposure considerably, which is why today many military and police units use suppressors far more for the health and long-term hearing preservation of their own personnel than for any tactical stealth advantage on the battlefield. Separating fact from fiction. The persistent myth of the silent silencer endures largely because it makes for compelling cinema, a clean and bloodless fantasy of assassins who can eliminate a target without anyone in the building ever knowing. The reality, rooted in the basic physics of expanding gas and supersonic projectiles, is considerably less glamorous. A suppressor does not silence a gunshot so much as it downgrades an ear-splitting explosion into something merely very loud, a distinction that has made all the difference for hunters, sports shooters, and soldiers protecting their hearing for well over a century, even if it never quite lived up to the whispered pfft that Hollywood sound designers have spent decades convincing audiences to believe.